Jamila Woods. How are you
I'm
today?
wonderful. I am wonderful. How are you?
I'm great, and thank you so much for joining me. May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and so there's a lot of, I think, important information that you have that I want to get out to our listeners. And I also want to let you know that we are your partner. It's really interesting. When I became state's attorney, I knew I'd be dealing with a myriad of issues, but the one that has stood out the most is mental health. And especially during this time when we're still dealing with the global pandemic and the after effects, or really the effects, the ongoing effects of it, I recognize that both in our young offenders and our older offenders, there is this commonality that many of them are dealing with mental health issues. And the best way to address that in the criminal justice system becomes a really important question. So I'm really excited to be able to talk to you today. Can you tell me what led you to become an advocate for mental health care and awareness?
Sure. To be honest with you, State's Attorney, my involvement came directly as a result of some of the challenges that I dealt with as a child. I grew up in foster care. I was adopted when I was 12 years old, and I saw and experienced a lot of things that people shouldn't see and experience. And a part of what I saw and experienced was how the trauma and the drama that I experienced, as well as my siblings, there were a total of 10 of us who went through this one home, and everybody left with some types of wounds or some types of injuries. And unfortunately, some have never been able to move past the drama. One of the my adopted brothers, winded up. He became an alcoholic when he was 12, and he continues to struggle. Another brother left the house as a teenager, school age teenager, and our parents, filed a missing persons report. We didn't see him again for years. Sister, a couple of sisters got on drugs, and just all of us, present company included, had our own experiences. And I vowed that I wanted to do whatever I could do in my life, in my purpose, and to prevent people from having to go through the things that I went through. And so that was what drove me to go to school for social work. And once I got in school for social work and I realized all of the dynamics around our mental health and well-being, and how it really starts for so many people in their childhood years, that
Mhm.
commitment that this is what I want to do. And Aisha, I was working a very good government job, making very good money.
No, we really appreciate it because you're providing an invaluable service to our community. And as a result of the experiences that you had and that you watched others have and your training, you decided to start Gabriel's Lyric
Yeah.
Therapeutic Services. Tell us what type of services you offer.
So Gabriel's Therapeutic Services tries to offer a myriad of services. We try to be available. Needless, we can't be available to all people for all things, but we make sure that we allow ourselves to be a venue. So if we can't provide a service, whether it's counseling, um, types of therapy, we even do mental health first aid training. We do a lot of speaking at multiple engagements. Because I'm also a pastor of a church, I am really, really, really adamant about working with faith communities, because contrary to popular belief, there's also some stigma and shame in faith communities as it relates to mental health. And so we try to provide a myriad of services. We do marriage counseling, we do different types of therapies. Whatever we can't do, though, we don't let a person go until we put them in the position where they can get the help that they need. So if we can't provide a service, then we will always send people out to other people who can provide the services.
That's wonderful. And one of the other great things I think you do is you provide training for others. Can you talk a little bit about the training that you offer for people who want to be in the health space, the mental health space?
Sure. So I am a certified mental health first aid instructor, and certified to instruct both. You instruct adults in how to work with both adults and youth. And they actually have a new component now that trains you specifically to how to work with children. What we do, State's Attorney, is that we teach people how to assess What are the signs and the symptoms that you look for? That's one of the biggest questions that people have. How do I know someone is in trouble? And contrary to popular belief, most people don't. We don't have any idea. And so we try to teach you. There are some signs and symptoms that without being told, you may never know, may be leading someone into a serious mental health challenge or mental illness. The other thing that we teach people is that mental health is a part of health. There's only one health, right? That is the key thing we teach people. There's only one health. And so how do we rid ourselves of this stigma and shame associated with mental health? We let people know that there's a very intricate, intimate connection between our physical and our mental and even our spiritual and our emotional health. And so we try to teach people to understand that you can't have one without the other. All of us have mental disorders. Some of our mental disorders I'm dealing with a mental disorder even as we speak. My mental disorder comes as a direct result of the very unexpected loss of my son in September of last year. And then 5 months later, my mother in February of this year. I've been dealing with a great deal of grief and sadness that impacts our mental health. I know that in the same way that doctors need doctors and attorneys need attorneys, right? Nurses need nurses, therapists need therapists, that I had to go and get some help. But everybody doesn't know that. Everybody doesn't know that you need to go and talk to somebody and say, hey, I'm really feeling sad. I really need some. I do work, but I recognize I need the work also. And so I started Gabriel's Lyrics so that people would understand that there are people out here who want to see you well. They want to see you thrive. And so with the mental health first aid certification training, when I went through that training, I'm going to tell you, it was like a life changer for me. I was like, oh my God, we can teach average lay people how to recognize signs and symptoms that can have life-saving capacities. In the same way, a person has CPR, they can save a life without being a doctor, without being a medical professional. We can save people's lives who may be having mental health challenges, serious mental illness or mental disorders, if we just know how to address them, if we know the right things to say, the right things to do, if we know, why you can't shout at people and yell at people that are dealing with mental disorders, because those are what we call triggers, right?
Yeah.
Knowing that sometimes you can't touch people. People just don't know. Sometimes the first thing we want to do when somebody's going through is give them a hug. That might be the worst thing you can do, is touch. And so we try to teach all of those signs and symptoms and assessments so that people, and I promise you, I've been doing this now for 7 years, and I have never, ever to this day taught a class where somebody did not come back to me and say, oh my God, I had to put into practice what I learned in your class all these years. I had a gentleman who took my class. He was reluctant to take it. I said, listen, I promise you, I'll give you your money back if you don't get something out of it. He said, listen, I've been dealing with a son with mental health issues for more than 30 years. I think that by elimination, this is the truth, that by the process of elimination, I've kind of learned all the signs and the symptoms. Do you know that man literally cried at the end of the class because he was saying, oh my God, I just did not know this. I've been doing things all wrong. Now, he wasn't doing everything wrong, but he realized, oh my God, there were other ways I could have dealt with this to address my child. And he literally cried.
No, I think it's so great what you're doing, because you're taking the stigma away. You're also creating a safe spaces for people who, really need to talk to someone. I think for far too long, people, even if they weren't necessarily the ones dealing with an acute crisis, they were afraid to tell others that a family member, a son, a daughter, a mother, a sister or brother were dealing with it, because there was that stigma of how people would view me, even if, because I'm related to someone who has this issue. And the reality is, like you said, you are a mental health professional and you need therapy too. I mean, we all need it. And I think it's so great the way that you really just humanize and just make it more acceptable to talk about and to experience, the help that people need in a way that people can receive it. So thank you so much. A lot of what we deal with are people who have, mental health issues. Some of them have addictions, and especially when you have co-occurring kind of issues. many of those people unfortunately end up in the criminal justice system. And it's tough because on the one hand, you recognize that they have an issue. Now, sometimes it's been diagnosed, sometimes it has not been diagnosed. But on the other hand, there may be a victim who wants justice. There's a community who wants to be safe. There's a family that may be dealing with a family member where the family member who has an issue is very abusive to other family members, and so they don't want them in the home. It's a tough situation because justice requires us to look at all of those different factors to determine what is appropriate. Have you dealt with individuals who were in the criminal justice system or very much at risk of being in the criminal justice system? And if so, what advice would you give to prosecutors, to those who are in the court system, judges, others, because these are the very real issues that we have to face daily?
Yes. And yes, the answer is yes. And the answer is that I've also been in systems where I have advocated in front of judges many times. I on one occasion. Now I work out in DC, and so I was a DC social worker. So I was in court, almost every day of the week when I was doing the line social work. But I had an occasion, you'll find this interesting, where I was in Upper Marlboro for a court hearing, and a young man came before a judge, and that young man was struggling, and the judge became very upset and angry with the man because of the way he was answering questions. And I stood up and said, "Can I say something?" And he was like, "Who are you?" "Can I say something?" And then the marshal came over, and he's like, "Who are you? What are you talking about?" And I whispered to the marshal, "The judge needs to understand this man is having a mental health challenge right now." And the man asked the judge at one point, he said, "I need my mother." And the judge was like, "What do you mean you need your mother? You're a grown man." He was like, "I need my mother." And I said to them, "Please, please." And they came over. He went and told the judge. The judge took a break. He let the man go outside with his mother. He let the man come back in with his mother. The man did fine. He was able to answer every question. Afterwards, he thanked me. And he actually, when he cleared the courtroom, had me talk to him and the marshals and everyone in there to kind of explain, listen, there are signs and symptoms. You thought he was not, being cooperative, but I knew that he was literally getting ready to have a breakdown because it was overwhelming him what was going on. When I tell you that when that young man went out, they let him go out with his mother. He came back in with his mother. His mother went and said, you would have never thought he was the same person.
Wow, that's amazing.
Those are some of the signs and symptoms that we have to be able to look and say, sometimes you may think a person is being uncooperative. My son had a brain tumor, and my son was kicked out of 10 schools.
Wow.
He was in the 12th grade. I said to people all the time, I said, listen, something's wrong with my child. They didn't believe me. We didn't know Aisha until the tumor imploded. They thought it exploded, but it imploded. And when it did, they thought he had a malignant brain tumor. It wasn't malignant. It was that the tumor had imploded. I have a letter from Children's Hospital that said that he probably had from his childhood, from his infancy, literally. And these teachers and stuff were saying, this boy, he's doing this. You would say something to him, he would repeat back what you said. And you say something, he repeat back. He was in a school then where they were actually doing corporal punishment. They're spanking him. And one time the secretary at the school said, wait a minute, he's having a seizure. All of these things, can you imagine? This impacted my son so adversely. This is why my business is named after my children.
This is so powerful. I've known you for quite some time, but I don't know that I knew your full story. And let me tell you, the fact that you're able to do this work, hearing those stories, knowing that you have a story and a testimony too, but being able to be there for others is so powerful. And I really have to thank you for that. And I thank you for being just so transparent and sharing your story. Now, I know you have an annual event, which my office is helping to sponsor this year. We're really excited. This upcoming Saturday, May 14th, Can you tell a little bit about, or talk a little bit about what's going to happen at the conference and who you have on your lineup? Because you have quite a few impressive speakers.
Yeah. Yeah. So this year's conference is called 2022 Mental Health and You. And of course, this is Mental Health Observance Month. So it's going to be this Saturday at First Baptist Church of Highland Park in Landover, Maryland. Conference is actually free this year. I just felt led this year because of all of the things that have happened with COVID, and we've seen an increase in mental health. We've seen an increase in suicide. We've seen an increase, a lot of challenges that impact our mental health. And so I called together a group of people, Dr. Reginald Thomas, who's a psychologist. He's also a pastor. I told you that I try to do a lot of connection with the faith communities too, because they are key in helping with mental health. But I have a Dr. Reginald Thomas, who's coming out of Baltimore, who's a psychologist, and who's a therapist, and who's going to talk to people about mental health and talk about those things that we don't want to talk about, right? I have two people, Quest Delaney and Cindy Harding, who have actually lived with serious mental health challenges. Cindy Harding continues to live with major depressive disorder. She actually was recently put on disability. This is a woman who loves children, loves to work with children. Children love her, but when she goes into those depressive goes into that period of depression, and she's unavailable. Even with these children that she loves and loves to be around her. Quest Delaney, on the other hand, like my son, had an accident and had a traumatic brain injury, and he winded up losing his memory, his taste, his ability to walk. And he talks about how his life was impacted because he had a girlfriend and he had children. He didn't recognize her. People don't understand, they take it personal when you don't recognize or you do things like, he's saying and doing things and she's saying and doing. He's like, I don't know you. I don't know who you are. The same thing with his children. And he talks about how he had to go through his life. He had to start all over again. It took him 5 years to completely remember everything and everybody. And when I tell you, I can't even imagine, because people get upset because you don't remember them. You don't remember what they like. You may not feel the same way about them because you don't feel like you know who they are. And so he's going to tell his story. Then I have Dr. Sherry Davis Mullock out of Georgetown University. And she's going George Washington. I'm getting confused. But she's a director of clinical study over there. This is so thorough. And she does a lot of work also with young people. I have Dr. Charles Williams, who's also a psychologist, and who is a master in Taekwondo. And so I have Candace Camille, the wellologist. So the way I've put this together is that I want people to know that it's a holistic process.
Yes.
Right? Those things like Taekwondo, and Candace Camille is going to talk about how when you take care of your physical health, you've got to, connect the physical and the mental health. And then I have pastors who are also licensed clinicians who are going to talk about how you have to connect your spiritual with your mental health. And so my conferences always try to be very holistic. Yes. Don't understand, a lot of times you can have mental health challenges that are directly related to physical illness. Have physical illness that takes you into a mental health challenge. And that's what I talked about, it being intricate and intimate process. And so I have these phenomenal speakers, these phenomenal panelists that are going to talk. Dr. Donald Moore, coming out of Philadelphia, also a pastor, and talks about the work he does, neurological work he's been doing at hospitals for over 23 years. I'm trying not to forget anybody because I didn't list in front of me. Reverend Javon Billups. He actually just received an award. He is the head of mental health for the DC Baptist Convention. Oh, wow. And he received an award from Mental Health First Aid for being the top mental health first aid provider this year. So that's a phenomenal thing. And he'll be with us and talking about the work that he does. Trying to go down through my head, but we have 8 panelists and this wonderful keynote speaker. We have Malik Arnett does Mind Ministry. He's going to be there. I'm going to actually be singing a song in tribute to my son. And then I have 2 young people. This young lady, Jordan Young, she's doing it's a video, very, very brief video. It's only about a minute long, but it is so powerful about mental health. And another young lady, oh Lord, I can't call her name, but her last name is Ruth. We're starting out with her video. She did a 10-minute video, Aisha, of an experience that she had. Very true story, where she went to visit a friend that, you know, wasn't doing so well. And she was like, I'm gonna just go check on her. And this girl was suicidal and she had no idea. And so she literally did a 10-minute video to talk about how she helped her friend and how 2 weeks later she got a letter from her friend saying that that was the day she was going to take her life. But it all changed because she came to the house to check on her and she wouldn't let her go. When the woman didn't want to let her in, she was like, oh, you can't come in. No, this is not. She's like, well, I got to go to the bathroom. I'm smart thinking, like really smart thinking. Let her in to go to the bathroom. And then when she saw her home, she was like, okay, something else is going on. And she wouldn't leave her. She stayed with her. She cleaned up. She sat with her. She talked to her. She encouraged her. And the girl went and got some help. And she's alive today. And that's
so powerful. So powerful. I know that Saturday is just going to be full of testimony, full of information, direction, support. It's what we need. You know, it's what we need. We need to talk about this every month. Obviously, May is Mental Health Awareness Month, so we're going to uplift and highlight it a little bit more this month. But just like you're saying, every single day there's someone who's, you know, at risk of suicide. And when I think about the young people, the very, very young people that have suicidal ideation and who are contemplating taking their own lives, it just pains me, it hurts me. But I think what makes me hopeful are people like you and conferences like this. And so I hope that people come, whether they believe they know someone who is suffering or they themselves are suffering. The truth is we will all encounter it. And if we live long enough, we will feel the impact of the world on us too. And we need support as well. You know, and I really appreciate the fact that you are holding this conference. In our last final moments, can you just talk a little bit about what you hope that participants walk away with from the conference on Saturday?
My biggest hope is that they walk away with a normalcy about mental health, that people will understand that if you have to take psychotropic medication, it's no different than having to take blood pressure medication. It's no different than having to take medication for a migraine. That even when we take those psychotropic medication, it's because there is a physical challenge going on in our brain chemicals that you need medication to help balance out. It's not because you're crazy. You know, that's the mindset people have. You know, you talked about people having loved ones and friends and being ashamed, but you have people who have mental illness and they're afraid, they don't want their boss to know. You shouldn't be afraid to let your boss, if I'm not afraid to let my boss know that I get migraine headaches, I should not be afraid to let my boss know that I'm bipolar. I should not have to feel like there's going to be some punishment. You understand what I'm saying? I should hope that I will get support like I get support for every other thing that I need, you know, for caring for my children, for caring for my loved ones, to care for myself. And so I want people walking away with a normalcy, understanding, normalizing mental health so that we can encourage people to get help.
Absolutely. Well, we thank you so much, Ms. Woods, for all the work that you do throughout the year. We're really excited to partner with you this year on your conference, and we invite everyone to come out and participate, and we look forward to seeing you. And thank you again.
By the way,
I'm sorry?
I want to let our audience know the conference is free of charge.
Free of charge, and you can check it out on our Facebook page at PGSAO News. You can find it there. We will be advertising it because this is such an important and powerful conference. So that's at PGSAO News if you want more information. Thank you so much, Jamila, and I will see you on Saturday.
All right. Have a wonderful day here.
Okay, bye-bye.